Alright, this is the second video for the architectural template, and I'm going to be creating a couple of blocks that I find really useful for architectural drawings. The first one is going to be a block that I would use in details, and I call it X-Lum, and it allows you to create lumber at any size that you need with one single block type just by changing the X and the Y values. The first thing to start with is switch to the layer that you want the outside edge of the block to be, and in this case I want it to be on the 0 layer, so it actually changes to whatever layer characteristics that I put the block onto. So I'm going to start off with the rectangle command and then go at 1, 1 to create a 1 inch by 1 inch block. Then I'm going to switch to the detail 1 layer and put 2 lines diagonally inside the block. Because I put this on the detail 1 layer, these lines will never change line weight. They're constantly going to be the line weight and the characteristics of detail layer 1. It will also, if I insert this block into another drawing file, bring that layer along with it. Whereas if I put anything on the 0 layer, nothing will go with that block except for the block itself, the block definition. So this square and these 2 lines are going to define my block. To create the block, I'm going to go into the block command by typing B. I'm going to name the block. Select the objects I want to be included in the block, and then I want to pick my point that I'm going to be using to insert the block. So I want to insert the block based on that lower left hand corner, and I want to just delete the block when I'm done. So I'm going to choose delete block and then hit OK, and you'll see that everything goes away. Now to use the block, if I hit I to insert it and I find that block within the list, X-Lum, I want to turn on insertion point, turn on scale, and turn on rotation. And now, for instance, if I wanted to create a 2x6 shoe plate, I could hit OK, click to place the block, and then I could put in an X factor of 5.5 for 5.5 inches, and then a Y factor of 1.5 for 2.5 inches, and then I can define the rotation, which a mud sill would be positioned in that direction. Now the outside rim of the block I want to be a thicker line weight than detail 1, so I'm going to switch to detail 3. You'll notice just the outside rim changes because that's the only thing that was on the 0 layer. These 2 lines in the center stay the line weight of detail 1 because that's the layer I use to define the block with. Alright, I'm going to add another one just to show you how to use it, how else to use it. I'm going to add one for a rim joist here. And we're going to define an X direction this time of 1.5 because it's 1.5 inches because it's standing upright, and then a Y scale factor this time of 9.25, which would be a typical 2x10 size. And then I can go on to create my detail for my wall section, just to give you an idea. Alright, another really useful block is a door block. So I'm going to switch back to the 0 layer to define my lines that I'm going to use for my door. I want to create a rectangle that starts here, goes at 1.5 by 36 inches. So this should be a 3-foot door by 1.5 inches thick. And I also want to define the swing. So the swing I'm going to create by using the arc command, and I want to define the center of the arc here. I want the start point of the arc to be 36 inches from the center, and then I want the end point of the arc to be at the top of the door. Now this is also another one of those lines where I want to make sure it doesn't show up thick at all, so I'm going to put that on that detail 1 layer again. But then this is going to stay on the 0 layer so that when I insert this I can put the whole thing on the door layer, and this will define the door thickness, but this will always stay a thin line to define the swing. Alright, next, to make this door be capable of being any size that I want, I'm actually going to scale this door down so that the width and the height of it is actually 1 inch by 1 inch. To do that, I'm going to type in SC for scale, select both the swing and the door, pick the base point, which would be the hinge of the door, and then I want to put in for a scale factor 36 over 1. I'm sorry, 1 over 36. So that should have made that exactly 1 inch in length and height. Let's do a distance. 1 inch by 1 inch. All right, this is what I'm going to use to define that door block. So I'm going to go back into the block command, call this X door, because it can be any size. Select the objects that I want to be included as the block definition. Pick the points. This should be where the hinge of the door is. and then I want to just delete this once I'm done. Now to test the door, let's create 2 lines. And I'm going to draw a line here and offset that 24 inches to define an opening. So I want a door that's exactly 24 inches wide to fit in this opening. So I'm going to insert the X door, keep the insertion point scale and rotation on, pick the insertion point. For X factor I want to put in 24 inches, and then notice at the command line it says enter Y scale factor or use X scale factor in parentheses. I want to use X scale factor, so I'm just going to hit enter, and then this allows me to define the rotation. Now if I for some reason decide to change the size of that door to 36 inches, I can select the door, and in my properties I can change the X, Y, and Z factor now to 36, and that will automatically change the door size for me as well. Now the Z factor doesn't really necessarily have to be changed. That would only be applied if it was a 3-dimensional block, but to be consistent I change it all. So this door now can be any size we want it to be, and it can actually swing in any direction and rotate in any direction just by either mirroring it or rotating it once we insert it. So those 2 blocks are really useful. The last block I'm going to show you is a window block. And I'm just going to create a window block by creating a 36 inch by 6 inch rectangle, and then I'm going to draw 2 lines 2 inches in from the end. That's going to represent our frame. And then I'm going to create another rectangle on the inside. Let's make that 1.5 inches tall, and we'll move that whole rectangle so that the midpoint of the rectangle is at the midpoint of the line. Now I'm going to draw a line in 1.5 inches, another one here in 1.5 inches, and then I'm just going to draw a single line from the midpoint to the midpoint of the other line. So this is representing the sash of the window, and then that's the glazing on the inside. Now some of these lines I want to be darker than others, and some I want to be lighter. So I'm going to use the trim command and trim these 2 lines out and draw in individual lines so I can put them on a separate layer. These 2 lines are representing the frame of the window beyond, so they should be a much lighter line weight. I'm going to put those on detail 1. These lines here, we'll explode them so that we can get them as individual lines. These lines here and here should actually be put on the wall layer, so that when you break the wall apart you end up with a nice thick line defining where the opening of the window is, and then all the rest of the lines are defining the actual window. So they should be that lighter line weight, or they should be all on the layer 0, so that when you put them on the glazing layer they'll automatically acquire the correct line weight. So there's my window block. I'm going to turn this into a block by typing in B, then typing in win. Now this isn't a multi-sized window, so I'm just going to type win. And we could obviously make adjustments to this window size by scaling it. Select objects, grab the whole thing, and then we want to hit pick points. And I want to define the window insertion point by the midpoint of the window, not the end of the window, because that's usually how you place windows in exterior walls, defined by their dimensions to the center. I want to just delete the block when I'm done, and then let's flip to the glazing layer and we'll see how this works. So let's put a window here in the wall. Want to insert win, and I say I want to insert this so that it is 5 feet from the edge. So I'm going to hover over the endpoint, type in 5 feet, and then I can define the rotation and scale of the window. If I use the B trim command, I can use these 2 lines to trim away the wall so that the wall goes to the edge of the window. And if this is on the wall layer, it's going to be a 0.5 line weight, and the window will be a 0.3 line weight. So when we do print this, we're going to see the line weight difference. So when you zoom in closely, you can see that the thicker lines define the window, and then the line weights show what we're seeing, what's close up, what's in section, and what isn't. So there's my examples of at least 3 blocks that I would add to your architectural template that I find really useful.